And so I like the teachings within the complexity that bring us back to simplicity. Because when life gets going and your to-do list gets long, it's just those little reminders that pierce the speed of the day.
Welcome to the Road Home Podcast with Ethan Nichtern. Join Ethan as he and his guests explore the Buddhist path as it relates to art, culture, activism, politics, Western psychology, and more. If you'd like to support Ethan's podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/Ethan.
Hi, everybody. This is Ethan Nichtern for the Road Home Podcast. Happy 2023. We're making this podcast, the folks at Be Here Now and myself, once a month for this year, which, I'm a little bit bummed about personally, even though you'll see that the topic of my podcast sort of talks about why that's a good thing. But we'll still have a great monthly episode, hoping to have some really cool guests on later this year. And I'll probably be making more short writing or audio offerings, especially later in the year on my own website, ethannichtern.com. 2023, huh? What an interesting year. I think a lot of us are hoping for actually an uninteresting year, which, 2023, I'm thinking back, are there any sci-fi movies from earlier on in history that take place in 2023? Blade Runner takes place in 2019, so by that metric, we might not be doing so badly. But no, 2023, even in sci-fi, it feels very sci-fi to me. As somebody born in 1978, a good year to start contemplating more and more and more the truth of impermanence and aging and all things passing. But even from a sci-fi perspective, it feels sort of like a random year in the future, even though that year is now. And we'll see what happens socially and geopolitically. That's very interesting. It's been a really interesting time. Probably should not laugh, but it's been weird to watch. I don't know if you're keeping up with American politics as 2023 gets underway. Watching the situation in the House of Representatives as Republicans have taken control, and I put that into quotes, of that legislative body. Democrats maintain and expanded their majority in the Senate, the other legislative house of our federal government. But was a really interesting exercise watching Kevin McCarthy try to become Speaker of the House. He basically gave away all power that he could possibly have in the situation just to get the title, which is a very interesting, I think, from a dharmic standpoint, inquiry into the lengths that ego will go to sort of defend some aspect of identity, how much we're willing to suffer and create suffering. But it's energetically, it's a very interesting time, because I'll be honest with you, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've really had moments, even though I'm pretty good at holding myself together, have had moments of really feeling like the darkness was going to win geopolitically. I don't believe in good and evil, but when I say and put in quotes the bad guys, what I mean by bad guys is those who have a quest for power at all costs, those who are holding on to archaic and outdated systems like patriarchy, white supremacy, and just have this insane monetary backing and connection to the support of right-wing billionaires. It really has felt at different moments like maybe the world was going to very fully slip into darkness. And so, it's hard to know what state the United States are in. Brazil had its own January 6th, which may have been partially orchestrated at Mar-a-Lago by Jair Bolsonaro and Donald Trump after he lost re-election, a narrow re-election, but he had won his original election by a pretty darn good margin. So him losing his re-election, it wasn't like Trump in the United States who got crushed in the popular vote both times, but because of our strange anti-democratic system here in the United States was awarded the presidency the first time. So Bolsonaro lost. There was another uprising of right-wing, interests, but it was unsuccessful. Vladimir Putin is being highly unsuccessful, but causing all kinds of suffering and devastation through his own ego in Ukraine and Russia. So it's this interesting time that's not really funny, but energetically it no longer feels to me like the bad guys are definitely winning or on the cusp of winning. Again, the basically good bad guys is the way I'll say that, the confused guys. It feels sort of like a stalemate because the basically good guys, those who stand for wisdom and collaboration and compassion, aren't necessarily winning either. It's not clear what's going on, but watching some of these events, especially the basically the clown college of the apocalypse, which is what I'm thinking of when I think of the Republican House of Representatives. The image I kept getting in my head was like an outtake from a Star Wars movie where the Empire is still like a really huge threat, but Darth Vader tries to clench his hand in the air to choke somebody, but he ends up choking out himself. That's kind of the geopolitical energy of January 2023 to me. So Darth Vader is still very much alive and a threat. He has not been converted back to the Jedi way of wisdom and compassion, but somehow seems to have lost, if not power, at least momentum. So maybe this is a quieter year. Who the heck knows? Your personal situation may be very loud and painful right now. Your take on the world may be very different than the one I just laid out. You may look at all the mounting problems that our world is facing, or, I hope that you're not facing right now, but all of us are obviously going to be facing some problems. That's what being human is. But with all that being said, perhaps the energetic of 2023 is a slightly quieter, slower year. whether it is or not, we can think about intentionality for this time ahead. We can always think about intentionality. I think about my intention a lot. It's very much connected with how things go from a Buddhist standpoint. It's very much connected to mindfulness, and it's very much connected, as you may know, to the either the ingraining or the uprooting of habitual patterns, right? So it's actually said in the teachings on karma that you can do something really hurtful. You can do something, make a big mistake, and you have to obviously have some accountability for that mistake or that hurtful action or that problematic action. But if your intention was in a different direction, the sort of seeds of confused behavior do not ingrain in your consciousness nearly as much. So everything sort of follows from our intention when we're relating to karma and so forth. So what do we want to do this year or in the time ahead? What are we focused on? You know, it's interesting to think about life. I didn't really get this when I was younger, but everybody who is older than me said time starts to go faster, starts to repeat itself. The cycles of time start to repeat themselves more quickly as you get older. And now as a person in my mid-40s, really see this and, you know, sort of believed it, but maybe had a little bit too much of an attitude when I was younger of, okay, boomer, you know, and I don't have that attitude anymore, at least not towards matters of time. There is a real awareness that, you know, time is short. And we can only do a certain amount. Time is very, very finite. It's infinite from the standpoint of ultimate truth, but from the standpoint of one human life and the actions or activities that we take up, the practices, the journeys, the events, the relationships, the interests, you know, that we take up, the accomplishments. Life is really short. Hate to say that to all the, or a few of the Gen Zers who might listen to this late Gen Xer, but it seems like the boomers were right about that one. And probably before them, the greatest generation, and before them, the ancient wisdom holders of many different traditions who said life is short and precious. So what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this one precious life, Mary Oliver? Except she actually said wild and precious life. I don't feel like my life so far has been particularly wild, but it has been precious. And what do we want to do in 2023 or any period of time ahead? What do you want to do today? What do you want to do right now? I hope you're listening to this podcast either to gain some inspiration or because you're in some transit space, driving somewhere or commuting somewhere or in a resting moment of your day. And I hope listening to my podcast is not the thing that you're going to do today. And it's hard. You know, I know that it's hard to actually work on the things we want to work on. I'm trying to write 2 books at once now. One, which I actually have to write because I'm under contract for and coming towards a deadline to write that. I'm increasingly excited about it. You know, sometimes when I write nonfiction and write about Dharma or Buddhism. I'm like, oh, great, another Dharma book. But I feel like I found in this one a topic that really meets my interests, that being power, confidence, and fragility from a Buddhist perspective, which is something pretty much everybody I work with as a personal student, we talk about confidence, self-confidence, empowerment, ego fragility, insecurity, lack of self-confidence. So I'm happy about that, but there are other things I want to write. There's a lot of other things I want to write. I want to write poetry in my spare time. That aspiration is still very much there. I'm trying to finish writing this novel that I've been in and out of for the last handful of years. At some point in my life, I want to write some Buddhist sci-fi. I have an idea for that, right? So there's just a lot in the space of writing that I want to work with. There's all the courses, the Buddhist studies courses that I teach, which you can always feel free to hop in on if you're free Tuesday nights and want to check those out. You can go to dharmamoon.com for more info. Not really a plug, just if that's one of the things you want to do. It's a great thing. There's so many good groups that we can connect with online now. You can connect with teachers and sanghas and communities who aren't where you are because of the internet era. It feels a little bit more disembodied because of the internet era to study or practice online, but also much more accessible. Anyway, that's an aside. I have friends I have a hard time keeping up with. The boomers didn't tell me that was going to happen, per se. That you're going to have this group of, maybe your 20 closest friends and, your closest friends in the world, you're going to maybe have a conversation with, a real catch-up conversation with every couple of months. And if you see them, it's rare and it's magic, so I want to see people I haven't seen. The demands of parenthood, whoosh, they tell you about that one, but it's beautiful, but it is kind of unrelenting, in a good way, and it relents at times. And as your kid or kids, in my case, kid, get older, a little bit more space opens up. There's an expansion of space, which can bring about its own problems when we have too much space. But if you ever, write out your New Year's resolutions or aspirations, it could be that you end up with 37 things on your list. And then you go back to check it, and you're like, oh, I forgot something. I forgot this. I forgot this. I forgot this. I forgot this. And then, another year goes by and you say, I was supposed to take that glass blowing class this year. Oh my gosh. Another political election goes by and you say, gosh, more of us really should have volunteered. That actually happened in this election, even though things went worse for the Republicans than they would have guessed. My state and California actually really blew it. We would not have the Kevin McCarthy clown show if New York and California had showed up. The Democrats would have held the House, right? There was a forgetfulness, a complacency. Can't happen anymore, folks, unless you want to live in global fascism, which, I watched the new Star Wars series Andor. I don't want to live in fascism. So that has to be on all of our to-do lists, as I've argued, right? To at least do a bare minimum of engaging, voting, reminding friends, maybe writing a few letters. And it has to happen every election until we have some kind of new real system of democracy emerging in the U.S. and elsewhere where there's automatic voter registration. There is a conservative party, but it's not a fascist movement. We really need to be vigilant. And so that has to be on all of our annual to-do lists. A few elections in the United States this year, but there are a few. And then there's going to be a presidential election in 2024, which it's definitely going to be a fascist movement trying, right? So that's a thing that we have to put on our to-do list, unless that's your thing, unless dictatorship is your thing, in which case I'm surprised you're listening to my podcast. Yeah, but so many things, right? So many things you forgot to do. So many things you could have done, right? So much sense of FOMO and lament if I leave one thing off my list. I thought I was going to get to do more. They say, as they age, as time goes quickly by, as opportunities are missed. And so, I have come up with this idea, looking at the Buddhist teachings on impermanence and death, that for a person who's not facing death directly, all of us hear of deaths. If you're like me, it's starting to be the case that the generation above you, your parents' generation, is having health crises, a few early deaths. For that generation, you hear the stories, you feel the impact, you maybe are doing the care where you see the impermanence in death occurring. Maybe if you're a younger person, you've had a more impermanence-filled existence, which in some ways is a plus from a dharmic perspective of if you are confronted with illness and aging and death in the space around you earlier on, because you really see the truth of the precariousness of the human realm, the precariousness of our opportunity here, the preciousness of it, even during darker times. I hope we experience that truth in a way that's not overly traumatic or traumatizing. But for most of us, if you're a younger person, my theory is the way we experience the truth of aging and death is the death of an opportunity. A breakup occurs and we wonder what could have been, or, we studied this in grad school rather than that. You went to law school rather than got your MFA because you felt like, I need to make a living here. Isn't that awful? Isn't that awful how many people decide where to go to school because we don't value more creative things? I mean, we really don't. I know a lot of creative people who make a living, but they're not even called artists anymore. They're called content providers. So we lose opportunity. We missed a concert. Our favorite band was in town and we didn't see it before the show was sold out, right? There's so many ways for a younger person to experience death without it being the death of a physical body, but rather being the death of opportunity. And I think a lot of times when we look at what's my intention, what are the activities, what do I want to do with this maybe wild but definitely precious life, we freak out a little bit. We get overly rattled. We put too much on the list because of the FOMO, because the death of opportunity is staring us in the face. And we say, ooh, I'm turning X years old this year. I have to do these 17 things. And then the 17 things freak us out. You look at the list later on and you didn't do much of it, which is actually okay. But there was sort of a lament of all the failures rather than a real engagement in the things that we could do, in the things we didn't think we were going to do, right? I thought I was going to write a novel. I didn't think I was going to get way into the last couple of years building Lego with my daughter. That was something I was into when I was 8 years old, So I could look at that, right? I could look back and say, I really failed at the writing. I really failed at my aspiration to write creatively, right? Or I could look at it and say, look at this thing I performed, wholeheartedly, with good intention, with good connection, right? Good co-regulation of nervous systems between me and her and I. And I did it with an open-hearted intention, and wasn't that great, right? Did I put that on my to-do list? No. It's on my to-do list this year. We just got some more Lego pieces. So I think I've said on the podcast that Lego Master and Will Arnett is her hero, although now I think her heroes are actually the Lego experts that judge the show. Their names are Jamie and Amy. They live in Denmark at the Lego headquarters, which I imagine is a cool place, but it might be just a, pretty milquetoast corporate environment, like any other large corporation. And the question then becomes, what's the intention with performing activities, right? Sure, we can choose, right? There's always these moments where we choose, I want to go left rather than right. And if I go left here, these activities, these pathways, these relationships get augmented. I want to go to the yoga studio rather than the bar, because different things happen in each of those places. And then there'll be a choice in action because you went left rather than right. But sometimes you end up in situations you didn't expect to be in. And the question there is, what is my intention? So there's in the, one of the ones I think of a lot because it's so simple and we need simple reminders. The Dharma, any set of spiritual teachings, can be incredibly simple, or in the case of Buddhism, incredibly complex, sometimes overwrought. And Buddhism is incredibly simple and incredibly spiritually and psychologically complex at the same time. And so I like the teachings within the complexity that bring us back to simplicity. Because when life gets going and your to-do list gets long, it's just those little reminders that pierce the speed of the day. Meditation is something that pierces the speed of the day. Our wellness practices can pierce the speed of the day. But those little reminders from the teachings, from something we heard, from something we read, from a slogan, from an ancient text, can pierce. And so this slogan from the 59 mind training slogan says, perform all activities with one intention. So perform all activities with one intention. Now, when these slogans were developed in the 11th century in India and Indonesia and Tibet by this master teacher named Atisha Dipankara, did Atisha have a sense of what all activities would look like 1,000 years later, 10 centuries later? Like, what does he mean by perform all activities? How many activities could you really perform then? Although, because humans had to provide their own shelter and sustenance to a much greater degree, it's quite possible that activities of an individual human were still very diverse, right? They might not have been so fragmented and technologically driven and kind of erratic and anxiety producing. They might have moved at a slower pace throughout the day. But to be human is to perform quite a lot of activities, actually, throughout the day, right? And some of those activities are going to be planned. Some of those activities are going to be not what you had in mind. So what is the intention? The intention is the cultivation of bodhicitta, the cultivation of presence and open-heartedness towards oneself and towards others. That's the core intention. Perform all activities with the intention of awakened heart, awakened mind. It's great. That's great. If you're playing a game with your kid, can you do that? If you're writing in a genre other than what you thought you were writing in, can you do that? If you thought you were going to be an artist, but now you're a lawyer, can you perform that activity with the same open-heartedness that you would be making your masterwork if you were making your art right now? And if you thought you were going to be an artist, but now you're a lawyer, I think you still got to make art every once in a while. That's my humble thought, right? That's also why I like to write fiction and poetry, is because too much interacting with people, about their hearts and minds and spiritual selves, even though people are incredibly diverse, it's a little too one-dimensional for me, right? I like the ways that different areas of life bring us out of our shell and allow us to connect in a more cross-relational way, right? We use more parts of the brain, we use more parts of the heart. But perform all those activities with one intention. Perform all activities with one intention, the intention of bodhicitta. Okay, I have no idea what's going to happen this year. Good friends, dear friends, gentle people. We haven't quite come up with a phrase yet, have we? Acknowledged and dignified phrase that replaces the more binary ladies and gentlemen, but good, gentle people. Can you follow that? Perform all activities with one intention. Can you remember that? Or do you want a different simple reminder? So sometimes activities get diverse, but the other side of this is you won't get to do everything. You will not get to do everything. It's so important to remember that, because this is one of the main subterfuges, one of the main lies that we live in this tech-driven era where you can download an app for anything, you can look up how to do anything on YouTube. You will not get to do everything. You can't go to all the places you want to go. You're maybe going to get one vacation if you're lucky. You can't go to all the classes you want to go to, right? You can't. Guess what? Oh, this is the hard one. I can't see all my friends, all my old friends. I literally cannot keep up with everybody. Isn't that sad? How sad is that? And the other thing that makes that hard is some people get that a little bit more. Actually, some people are grateful that you can't keep up with them because either they don't really like you that much anyway. No, I'm kidding. Or they're struggling with the same reality of, I know, I've just been so busy and I wanted to keep up with you too. And some people don't get it, right? Some people don't get the limitations and how, no matter how much you love connecting with them right now lies outside of your limitations. But everything that's on your bucket list, everything that's on your list for this year, everything that's on your list for today will not get done. I know there's rarely days where you get it all done. I know that. But what does the mind do when you actually get to empty your email inbox, when you actually respond to every single text message, when you actually complete every single activity? What does the mind do? Does it rest in the spaciousness of savoring the accomplishment of your humanity? Not usually, right? It just creates new to-dos. I really want to do this now. I really want to do that now. And it never ends, right? If we take a I need to do everything approach out of our FOMO of the impermanence of this one precious life, you're kind of caught in the trap of a particular speedy version of samsara that we all live within. In the tantric teachings, it's called the karma or the wind family of samsara, the activity-oriented family of samsara. Gosh, it'd be great if you finished something and then the mind just said, all right, let's rest. Let's drink water. Let's sip water. Let's take our seat and let's enjoy the accomplished. You accomplished your humanity. You accomplished these purposes. But 99% of the days, you do not do everything. And a lot of times it's because we're so freaking paralyzed by the fact that we aren't getting to do everything. We feel like such a failure that we say, what's the point of even doing a few of these things? So I'm a big fan of being real, being very real. I've come to realize as I try to fit, for example, writing into my day, that if I want to get 1 good hour of writing done, I need to leave 3 hours of time to do it, you know? Just like it's also maybe parenting has helped because, you know, if I need my daughter to get dressed in 5 minutes and get out the door, it's going to take 15 minutes, you know? Everything is going to take time, and simplicity is the key. So keep it simple. Eliminate things from the to-do list. Take them off. Take 1 class this year, right? And if there's space for more, great. But when you look at your mind, when you look at your heart, when you look at your activities, what can you reduce? Obviously, taking this approach of trying to reduce and simplify activities a little bit is helpful to planet Earth. Although, pretty clearly speaking, it's not just going to be on individual action that helps planet Earth, but why not try? I'm going to start a compost bin again this year with my daughter, but that's one of my to-do things because we can do that together. But it helps, right? Simplification helps. And in the places you can't simplify, because it's really the external world pressing on you, then the slogan, perform all activities with one intention. And if you want that intention to be the cultivation of bodhicitta or awakened heart mind, if that's in your language, in your spiritual lexicon, and you connect with that, you could just think of, you know, how does this help me rouse bodhicitta? How does this help me connect with my awakened heart? If you have another spiritual or psychological lexicon for what that one intention could be, please use it. But either simplifying activity, feeling into the space around our activities, or simplifying our intention when we can't simplify activity. Anyway, that's what I'm going to be working on this year. I hope for, geopolitically, socially more simple year as well. But, that's up to so many interdependent factors, and we may have to just accept that we're living in complex times and see how to become more simple within that complexity. So anyway, those are some thoughts for January of 2023. And I hope this finds you well. I hope everybody in your life is well and free from sickness and unnecessary hardship. And if that's not the case, I hope they have the circumstance to meet the hardship with some level of inner ease and have the outer support that they need. So that's it. We'll have a good guest the next time this podcast airs. So keep tuning in once a month this year to The Road Home. And for Ethan Nichtern, that's all. Have a great month.